So we're here today with the House Democratic Caucus leadership from the Kentucky House. All of y'all, welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
having us.
Glad to have you. Glad we were able to put this together. It's a busy time. It's a crazy time. It's almost the end of the time. So we're just glad that we can look back over what's happened and find out how y'all are feeling about things. Let's start with introductions. In my lower left, I see somebody named Pamela Stevenson. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Pamela Stevenson. I am the floor leader for the House Democratic Caucus.
And what district, where are you from?
District 43, Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay. And in my upper left, Mr. Gentry.
Yes, I'm Representative Al Gentry. I'm the House Democratic Caucus Chair, and I represent District 46, which is in the south central suburbs of Jefferson County outside of Louisville.
Excellent. And Ms. Burke.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Lindsey Burke. I am the House Minority Whip, and I represent the 75th District, which is Central Lexington.
Excellent. So I have to ask a question before we go any further. I understand chair and things like that, but whip, what exactly does a whip do in a political sense?
Well, at the simplest form, I count heads and count votes. So when contentious issues are on the line, my job is to meet with members and find out where they stand. And I think the whip part comes in when I need to get people in line for getting our members to be all in agreement so that we can effectuate change together.
Well, unfortunately, with the current situation of the Democrats in the House, the counting part probably is not too hard. You just have fingers and toes and you've got it done. So,
sad but true. I've said that's a good thing because there's a joke about how lawyers are bad at math, and well, at least I can count to 20.
Yep, that's right. Well, we are coming down to the last couple of days. The governor has been busy with his veto pen. I just did a story about more bills that were vetoed. So before we get into looking at the entire session, let's talk about today's news. Do you think that there are any of the bills that he has vetoed where the veto will be sustained? Are there any where you think that there is enough agreement with his stance among the Republicans that the veto can be sustained? Or are they all going to be overridden just because that's what they're going to do? Any of you jump in?
Yes.
Sorry, Pam. Go ahead.
So you go ahead. No, because Rep. Burke has been working on this pretty extensively today.
I think that chances are all of these overrides will succeed. The one I'm most interested in watching, though, is House Bill 398. It relates to workers' comp. That bill was close in the original passage on the floor because some of the more labor-minded Republicans knew the pitfalls of the bill and were trying to make it better so that it wouldn't be as damaging. That being said, the majority rules their caucus very sternly. And so even though there was some contention within the caucus, I do expect that they will twist or break enough arms to get done what they intend to get done.
I was hopeful. Well, wait a minute, before I say anything, Pam and Al, what about you? Do you agree with that assessment?
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even though we had a few on our side on 398, it's not enough. And of course, with my personal circumstances, I think it's one of the worst bills that we passed the entire session. But yeah, it looks like there may be a complete override. There was one we were talking about earlier today, and I don't know what the status of is, but we think some intended consequences may have hit on House Bill 136. And is it 136 or 137, Rep. Burke? You remember that number?
I think it's 137. This
Bill
was a
37.
bill about corrections, data collection.
Yes, yes. And Pam was going to be meeting with the leader, but I don't, and talk about that. I don't know if they had a chance to, because they had a lot of things that they were supposed to be talking about this afternoon. But that could be one that if they actually listen, then maybe they might not push that through. But that's about all I can think of at the moment.
Actually, Al, I was wrong about the number. It's 136.
Okay.
There was one bill that in his veto message, he said that if the veto was overridden, it would cause the administration to break a contract with a contractor and lead to all sorts of legal ramifications, which I thought was interesting.
Yes, Bruce, that is the bill we're talking about. The contract in question is a telecommunications contract for the Department of Corrections, and it covers how inmates across the state communicate with their families and friends. And not only would there be costly litigation as a result of us breaching that contract, but then there are also extenuating costs that the Commonwealth will be forced to bear. So, for example, people commonly don't know this, but prisoners are getting tablets or iPads as part of their communications equipment. Those iPads will have to be collected and returned to the company that we have the contract with now. And the inmates are allowed to buy apps using their own money on those iPads. So if we take them back and go with a new vendor, then we're going to have to pay for inmates' apps that they purchased. So we're either going to have to issue refunds to inmates, or we're going to have to somehow compensate them from the fact we're taking something they purchased. So I don't think anybody really has the appetite to write a check to inmates for app purchases, especially since this contract is set to expire in 1 year and would be rebid at that time anyway.
Me, the dangers of passing bills quickly. All right, so let me ask you a couple of things. You made a comment about the majority disciplining their caucus sternly. I noticed, I assume you know that we track bills. I have a bill tracker on the website, actually multiple ones, and I also do the every morning newsletter of what happened in the assembly the day before. And so as a result, I see all the votes of the bills that we care about. And I noticed that unlike the Republicans usually are, although not every time, that the Democratic caucus in the House was not always unified. There were people voting off in different directions and sometimes not voting and so on and so forth. Is that so? Let me set the context of what I'm asking. In the Senate, in the United States Senate, there are a couple of Republicans who occasionally vote against the Republican platform. And everybody goes, well, they're so brave that they stood up to McConnell, and everybody else says, no, he let them vote that way because they needed it for their district. And so I understand that. That's fine. So how much of this is I need to vote this way for my district, and how much of it is really just different opinions in the caucus?
I mean, as the whip, I would say it's a little bit of both. Our members represent diverse constituencies. Each one of us represents about 45,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democratic caucus, because of our shrinking numbers, we've also lost presence in parts of the state we used to have a greater presence. So we're very mindful of the fact that certain members, their districts are much more purple. They are not highly progressive areas. They are traditional Democrats with more centrist values. And we want our members to be able to properly represent those voters, because those are the ones who bring them back to Frankfort, and we need them to come back. So there's some of that, voting your district. There are also just simple differences of opinion. A lot of the things that come across our desk are controversial, and people of good conscience can find themselves on both sides of the issue. So there's that. And then I would say there's a whole lot of records that look like non-votes this session because the General Assembly passed around a lot of nasty viruses. I myself was out for a whole week. And so, and then Leader Stevenson was out for a week. Representative Gentry got sick and missed a little bit. It was just a cesspool here. And, it's better and more respectful, I think, for us to step aside and come back and record votes later. But then the voting record doesn't look complete. And you really have to dig to see how we've corrected those missed votes.
I understand. So I'm trying to think, Representative Gentry, I think you have been there the longest of the three of you. Is that correct?
That is correct. I came in and my first session was 2017, which was the first session that the Republicans took over the House of Representatives, and first time in 95 years. So
right.
I was christened in a very unique way that first week.
I bet you were. So here's my question. Sometimes you hear people say, well, a lot of the back and forth is for the media, it's for public consumption, and behind closed doors, we get along and we're collegial and we're friends and so on and so forth. Was that true, Al, at one time, and is it true now, or is it really just us and them and we don't talk?
I think that was more true several years back, where a lot of it was theatric. Really, before I was there, I think it was more true. I think it's less true today. I think there's truly more division today, and even though that we have differences in policy, a lot of us do get along off the floor. Even, some of my best friends in the legislature are on the other side, and we don't agree with a lot of things ideologically, but we're friends, and there is some respect there. There are some others that, maybe aren't as cordial with some of us, but yeah, I don't think theatrical is a very good word. I think a lot of times we are debating and asking questions as an attempt to tell the public and share with the public what the key components are in some of these bills, especially some of them that move very quickly that we even have trouble finding out what is in the bill exactly. They're at the end, right before veto period starts, and you get a lot of what we call sausage making, where bills start getting put together. Substitutes come very late, and I have a famous saying that I say amongst my friends that, hey, when a sub is dropped late at night and there's a committee meeting the next morning and it goes to the floor that same day, somebody's about to get hurt, and it's usually the little guy. So and we've seen that a couple of times this particular session.
Representative Stevenson, I have a question for you. Since you deal maybe more than the other two with the opposition leadership, the Speaker of the House and so on and so forth, I get the impression that they really don't like Governor Beshear. Is that accurate?
What I will say is they are if you look at all the laws that they passed to take power away from the governor, to blend the executive branch with the legislative branch, it's probably more a power grab, and it doesn't help that he is a Democrat. Now, I understand they didn't like Matt Bevins either.
Well, yeah, most of us didn't like Matt Bevins, so there you go.
I'll make a quick comment on that as well. Since I came in 2017, Bevin was the governor, and at that time, Governor Beshear was the acting attorney general, and we also had the seat of Secretary of State at the time as well. And we passed several bills that the majority passed that pulled powers away from both the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State's office and gave them to the governor's office. And when Governor Beshear came in and we lost the other two seats, they did a complete reversal and have been going down that path ever since. So there is definitely a power-hungry, driven agenda there that's quite obvious, as the leader has spoken about.
So let me ask you about national affairs and how they affect in Frankfurt. Off the record, behind the scenes, do you have any of your Republican counterparts who are as shocked and appalled at what is happening in Washington as we are? Do they comment like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe what just happened," or are they all solidly behind Donald Trump?
I would say that in my conversations, I've not had anybody say a word. We are losing money through Medicaid, Medicare. We're losing money through tariffs and people pulling our bourbon off the shelves. And there's been no outcry from the legislators or the chambers.
Okay.
So that leads me to say that they, I don't know how they feel about him. I just know they're doing everything he says to do.
So I came over there to speak to a certain legislator about a certain topic. It wasn't about Forward Kentucky. It was about a particular bill that I was interested in. This particular legislator had a life-size cutout of Donald Trump in the office, and I bit my tongue and just smiled and went along. Our website has a place on it where it talks about, you can look at bills and how many were sponsored by Republicans and how many were sponsored by Democrats and how many were bipartisan and so on and so forth. I noticed last year, I haven't checked it this year, but I noticed last year that there seemed to actually be more bipartisan bills than there had been the past couple of years. What has been the record this year? Have you had have any bills sponsored by a Democrat as the primary sponsor actually passed?
Yes. And what I would say is, for our focus and one of our primary values is we work for the people, not our opinion. And oftentimes, if the Republicans have a good bill, we'll join it because we want good things to happen for the people in our district. And we've had some House bills that have cleared the House. For example, the Rep. Moore's bill, he wanted to cap the cost of EpiPens. And he got that passed through the House. And he was also, because it was his first bill to pass the House, we got to harass him a little bit.
Sure.
And we have other bills that passed through the House. Not as many as we would like. In fact, Representative Watkins stood up and said, "I'm a freshman. I'd like to pass a bill too," because they were passing bills for freshmen. So we must keep the lines of communication open. That's the only way we're going to move Kentucky forward.
So I'm going to ask all three of you to name a bill. Each one of you, name a bill that you're particularly happy or proud got through the House. So if you were going to say, okay, this is one I want to put a star by and put my name on, I'm glad it got through. Representative Burke.
I would say that I was very pleased that I don't remember the number, but we passed a bill that expanded punishment for serial violators of protective orders.
Mm-hmm.
So if you violate an order 3 times and your last violation is violent, and if you violate multiple people's orders, you get to 3 strikes, then you are eligible for a felony. And Kentucky's law, and particularly the application of law relating to violations of protective orders, has been really weak. Mm-hmm. Something I've seen in my work as an attorney. And so I was really happy that we could take that step this year and provide stiffer penalties for people who perpetuate violence.
Good. Representative Gentry.
Well, Bruce, you've kind of stumped me here. I'm sitting here thinking, trying to figure out which one I really liked. I was kind of prepared to go on a rant about all the ones I don't like.
Well, yeah, I'm going to give you that chance in a second. All right, you think about it. I'll come back to you. Representative Stevenson, one bill you particularly liked.
Well, okay. I get one as a lawyer and one as a pastor. So I love Rep. Burke's bill, but I also like the bill where they're teaching high schoolers how to be financially literate. That's really important because we've stripped a lot of things out of high school, and we need for them to have that skill set.
Good. All right, Representative Gentry, now you're on. You have one you like?
Oh, boy. No, let's just move on. I like both of them that they just said, so we'll just stick with that.
All right. Well, then let me come back to you and say, okay, tell me one you don't like, one you're really upset, angry, embarrassed that it got through the House.
Yeah, I'll say a quote I said on Kentucky Tonight, that a couple of bills came over for the Senate, and when I first looked at them, I said WTF. And I won't say what that means. I think most of your viewers know what that means. But
Yeah.
As a former practicing hydrogeologist, one of them was Senate Bill 89, which was changing the definition of waters of the Commonwealth. And I really don't think they realize what they're doing there. And when something that egregious comes through, I really sit and think, where do I even start? And what can I say about the protection of our groundwater resources and speak in such a way where these individuals would understand? And it's difficult. And I really ask, how did this start? Where did this come from? And do you understand? And some of the changes that were made to the bill were actually made it less worse, but still were almost irrelevant because they obviously don't understand groundwater, and geology in general. And so that was very difficult. And then when I think about Senate Bill 79, which we didn't take up, by the way, but there was an amendment put to that wanted to end all remote work in state government. And I was like, what? For somebody that stands for efficiency, I don't get that one whatsoever. And that was very, very perplexing. And of course, House Bill 398, which is the workers' compensation. The worker bill with OSHA, which basically voluntarily gives up our state's rights to make something a little more difficult or stringent in an industry that is needed. And we just gave that away. And I do not, for the life of me, understand that one whatsoever, other than just to give away to a couple of industries or big industries that might be seeking that. So,
yeah. Representative Burke, one you couldn't stand.
It's hard to make a list so short when the plentiful nature is there. For me, I'll go with House Bill 90, which was originally a good bill that I supported, but then it came back to us from the Senate with some language that was actually going to make it harder to protect women who were having crisis pregnancies. It was styled as supposed to be good for maternal health, but I think ultimately it was doing damage. The governor vetoed it, and we'll be discussing whether or not the veto will be overridden here in the next couple of days.
All right. And Representative Stevenson, your bad bill.
House Bill 399, it's one that bothers me because it goes at the foundation of our democracy. It goes at the foundation of how this country was formed. It says if you're in the House and you interfere with the processes by speaking loudly, they can have you arrested. Well, last time I recall, when they were stealing this land from the Native Americans and breaking up with the king, they dumped tea in the ocean. So protest is part of what we do, and we shouldn't abridge anyone's constitutional rights because we've been inconvenienced.
All right. I have two final questions. One is there anything you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
I'll go. You haven't asked me this, but I want to say publicly that we have a Tiger team. My two leaders that I'm looking at on the screen, Rep. Burke could be on the Supreme Court today. She's that brilliant. Al Gentry steps up and he stepped up into leadership to say, hold me accountable for this whole caucus. It takes a special type of person to set aside their private lives for others. And these two do it consistently.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked about? All right. My last question is this. Let's assume that this gets watched. I would love it if it did. Let's assume this gets watched by every Democrat in Kentucky. What would be your message to them as you look back over this session and look forward to other sessions? What do they need to hear from their House caucus leadership?
Don't give up. We're here fighting, and we need you to keep fighting with us. Please come join us. Reach out to us. Tell us what's important to you. If you feel like you have something to contribute in terms of joining the legislature, talk to us about it, because we need to know that you're interested and willing so that we can support you in growing our numbers.
Excellent. What else?
I'll go next. First of all, same thing she said from a never quit standpoint. I'll also add, don't listen to what they say as much as what they do. And ever since I've been here, there's been many, many bills that have passed that are not real kind to workers, to people vulnerable that are less, and a lot of friendly bills and gifts given to people with money and corporate interest. It's very obvious who they stand for, and I hope it's very obvious who we stand for. And we need to do a better job of making sure everybody across this state not only hears that, but understands that. I'm very proud of my colleagues that stand and fight every day, even though we have very small numbers, because we do it because we believe in it. We believe we're doing the right thing, and we stand up for all Kentuckians, especially those that are most vulnerable.
Excellent. Ms. Stevenson, you have the final word.
I would say to everybody watching and to every Kentuckian, you are the leaders that we count on. Engage. If you don't engage, find one thing you can do once a month, once a week, not just in a presidential year, but every month. Democracy is an engagement sport. We need you. We can't do it without you. You can look around and see all the things that are happening that only you can stop. With big numbers, talking to people on your cell phone to make sure that 100 years from now, they look at this point in time and say, thank you for preserving our democracy and our way of life in Kentucky. Thank you for saving Medicaid and Medicare. Thank you for making sure my child can have a public education. Thank you. That's going to require a you. Engage.
Excellent. Representative Gentry, Representative Burke, Representative Stevenson, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for standing in the breach, as it were. And we will hope that we can send you more reinforcements in the future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Bruce.
Bruce.